Hello and welcome to another episode of Sellers Society right here on Amazon Sellers Society YouTube channel. In this episode, I'm featuring Kian from Sourcing with Kian. You've seen Kian multiple times on the channel, and all the videos that we've done together have been very, very popular. So we're going to be talking about sourcing, suppliers, branding, and all of those juicy details. And as you can see, we are in a different environment. We are in the podcasting studio of Rove Hotel downtown, and it is overlooking the Burj Khalifa, so it's very inspiring. We're very inspired. We're very ready to get started. Are you ready? Then let's get to work. Now, before we dive into it, if this is your first time watching a video on this channel, hi, my name is Crystal, and I'm the founder of Amazon Sellers Society and Sellers Society. So this podcast, Sellers Society, is dedicated to our company that just happens to be the most interesting and newest tool out there to help Amazon sellers as well as Shopify sellers manage their business better and learn key data metrics such as how much money are you making? Are you spending too much money on your ads? And all of those juicy details. If you want to learn more and if you want to be the first person to use this software because it's launching in February, I would suggest that you go right now to the website www.sellersociety.io. Let's get to the interview.
Hey guys, how you doing? Kian, living and working in China for the past 12 years. In that time, manufactured over 2,500 different products, visited 500 factories, and attended more than 20 Canton fairs. That led me to work for a lot of different brands, licenses, retailers, such as the NBA, Olympics, United Nations, and then a lot of retailers in UK, Europe, US, and then in the last few years helping Amazon private label sellers as well. And just being able to apply those best practices of, okay, how do we find the best factory? How do we get the best price? How do we get the best quality? Tailoring those to like some of the different retailers and licenses and customers, and now applying that to the Amazon business model as well is what I've been really passionate about. So happy to answer any questions, happy to help, and happy to be here today. Thanks very much for having me, Crystal.
You know, Kian, the videos that we've filmed together so far have been like super, like a lot of people have watched them. A lot of people have said to me how interesting they are. So I'm very happy to be in person doing this with you. In this new setup, so it's kind of interesting for both of us.
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it is. So I was throughout thinking, okay, so what can we do? What more can we talk about? I see that a lot of people struggle in one element. Like the first part of Amazon is identifying a product. That's a struggle in and of itself. However, an idea, well, you need to turn it into reality, which means you need to find a supplier. So we were thinking, me and you, okay, let's do an episode talking about best practices or maybe mishaps, things to avoid, all about sourcing, which is an issue that a problem that a lot of people have. So let's get started with, let's assume I've already identified a product and I'm happy, I like it, I wanna sell it. I wanna source this product because I wanna sell it on Amazon. If I'm in my early stages of this Amazon business, or if I'm a little bit more advanced, or maybe if I don't want to do a big investment, or if I am willing to do a big investment. So let's get started with the most basic tips, let's say, and let's take it from there.
Sure, yeah. So I think once you've identified the product that you want to order, right, probably the most common one and everyone's heard of is alibaba.com. And just to be clear, like there's loads of very, very good suppliers on Alibaba, but there's also really bad suppliers on Alibaba as well. And the effectiveness and the key to your results in terms of sourcing is how you communicate, how you filter out those suppliers, and how you identify who are the good ones. So let's talk about that real quick. I mean, whatever product that you might be looking at, let's just say podcast, microphone, you type that into Alibaba, and you'll see, okay, here's one, $15, $30, $45, $12, but they all look the same, and you're like, well, how do I tell like which one's the best quality? They're all different prices. Maybe I'll go for that one, it's the cheapest one.
Yeah.
Or this one's the most expensive, that must be the best quality, I'll go for that.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily have a frame of reference in terms of like, you know, which one's the best. So on the top left on Alibaba, when you type in the search, it says products, but there's a drop-down menu, and I changed products to suppliers, because the purpose of Alibaba is to find the absolute best suppliers, and then once you find the best suppliers, then you can start to negotiate negotiate the price down. So once you hit suppliers, maybe let's say you have like 600 search results or something, you're like, okay, 600, that's quite a lot. How do I navigate through this? On the top, under the search bar, you'll see two buttons. One says trade assurance and one says verified. You absolutely 100% have to click those two buttons. Verified just means that the information the factory provides is said to be true. So if they say they've been established since 2003, they have 200 workers, they have these patents, that means a third party has gone in and verified that information is correct. So you know who you're dealing with, even though they are behind the computer. And then the trade assurance just means your payment is protected. So those are like the absolute essentials. But when you click those two buttons, you'll probably get rid of about 75% of the suppliers. Yeah. So it'll go from 600 to about maybe 150 suppliers. And then I like to fine tune it. On the left side of the page, you'll see markets. I'll select North America and Western Europe. That's really important because I want the suppliers to be already supplying the markets that I want to sell into. Or if it's the Middle East, you would just select Middle East so that they know and they're familiar with exporting to this area. What are the standards in this area? So they have the right certificates. So you know you don't have to teach them, oh, you must have this certificate and there's not any like mishaps or anything like that. And then further down below, it will say like certifications, and I'll select ISO 9001 quality standard, 14001 environmental standard, and they might not all have these things, but if they do, it puts them at the top in terms of like, these are a very quality supplier. And then like your list will become, I don't know, 50 or 40 suppliers out of that initial 600, but they are
much easier to manage.
Much easier. And the first word in every company name is the city or the province in which that factory is located. So podcast, microphone, electronics, it'll probably be Shenzhen that comes up, and if you scroll down and everything says Shenzhen, it means like, okay, great, I've identified the right suppliers. So we have the top suppliers, the information is verified, our payments are protected, they're supplying the markets we want to supply, they have the certificates that we need, and they're in the area which specializes in that product. After that, those suppliers are pretty good. And you can click on the company profile, and then you can see that, okay, here's the images of the factory, here's the location, here's their patents, here's their certificates, check. And that normally sets you off in the best way. And even if you're getting started, or let's say you're an intermediate seller, you've been selling for a few years, you might want to still carry out this exercise and be like, well, I want to go back and make sure that I've actually got the best suppliers. Because one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of people actually outgrow their suppliers. They do their first order, 200 units, they didn't get the best price, maybe they didn't get the best factory, but now they've really grown and scaled their business and they're doing 2,000 units a month, but they never went back and renegotiated their price. They never went back to see, could I get a better factory? So this is a good exercise for anyone to do at any stage in order to make sure you align with the best manufacturer.
It's actually quite amazing. And I want to talk about, next I want to talk about samples, because I think you're the only one I've heard talking about the different stages of when you should order samples, because normally you order a sample, you like it, then you go for it. But you have a different take on it, and I think you're 100% right. So, but before we get started with that, you've identified the supplier. Would you suggest, based on what we talked about, would you suggest that you talk to all 50, talk to all 40, or talk to 1 or 2?
I kind of have like a 10-3-1 approach, which is kind of like, right, identify who are my top 10, and then from those top 10, I want to narrow it down to 3, which I'm going to order samples from. And then the 3 that I get samples from, I'll compare the price and the quality, and then it's just 1 that you place the order from.
Got it.
So it's identify 10, samples from 3, order from 1.
Perfect.
And that's kind of the basic rule. But if it's something like very, very niche and bespoke, you might not have those 10 suppliers. You might just only have like 3 to work with.
Yeah.
But if you have a lot of choice, I would go 10-3-1.
10-3-1. Remember, guys, 10-3-1 That's good. That's a good rule. That looks like it sounds like a new exercise thing. Yeah. 10-3-1 So great. Another question I get a lot, and we've got a few questions from Instagram that we're gonna like go through quickly at the end. So another question that I get a lot is, do we read the reviews of the suppliers? Are those reviews on Alibaba, are they real?
Yeah, I completely ignore the reviews. I never check them. And that's just because 2 things. Like, if I've got a really, really good supplier, I don't want other people to have that supplier as well. So you might deliberately bash them so other people don't feel comfortable working with them. And then on the same side as well.
Really?
What if that supplier is able to manipulate their reviews, fake orders, rank it high? So I always assess a factory based on what is my take on what are their standards in terms of the information we just kind of covered in terms of patents, trademark certificates, how many years been in business, where's their location, is it verified? That's my assurance, not any reviews.
Let's move on to samples. So we've identified 10. 3, we've ordered samples. We like one of them. What's the next step after that?
The process, yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of go through like 3 stages of samples, which is your development sample, your pre-production sample, and your pre-shipment sample. Now, the development sample is like, let's say we want to do this podcast microphone, but we're like, okay, I want this to be 20 centimeters longer. I want to have a tiger pattern on the bottom for some reason. I don't know why you would want that, but let's say you do.
Who knows?
Now, these are my ideas of how I want to change and how I want to improve the product. And now I'm going to send those ideas and I'm going to send that information to the factory and I'm going to get a sample based on that. So that is now like my counter sample. That's my development sample. This is my idea and this is the sample that I received. Now, you might receive the sample and be like, actually the pattern is a little bit off, the paint chipped, it melted in the heat, whatever it may be, right? There's some issues now we need to fix. You go through your different samples. Sometimes they get it right first time. Sometimes it takes like 5 takes to get it right, depending on what the actual product is. And then when you're like, okay, this is a sample that I'm happy with. This is 100% what I want to order. Here's my 30% deposit because I approve this sample. That's your pre-production sample. That's like, you can go into production because I approve this sample. And then the first sample that you get, a development sample, that might be good enough, and you're like, okay, I'll order it. And that first sample is also your pre-production sample. And then you pay the deposit to start the production, everything goes fine. Now, before you arrange a pre-shipment inspection, before they ship anything, you're going to ask them, can you send me a sample from the shipment? And that's your pre-shipment sample. Now, you should have 2 samples hand in hand. This is what I approved for you to go into production, and this is actually the production. And they should be the exact same. And if they're not the same, if there's any changes or any differences, you have time to figure it out because the goods are still in the factory. So if there's any label requirements or something was wrong or the packaging was wrong, we can still fix it. We still have a chance, and most likely it will be at the supplier's expense because the goods are still in their warehouse. But if you never requested that pre-shipment sample and you're like, okay, cool, here's a balance payment, ship the goods, and they arrive and like, okay, it's missing a label, and you ordered 1,000 units. Now you have to open all those goods in your domestic warehouse, pay local label charges, buy the label, add it on, and you're talking about thousands of dollars. But that all would have, and you're unlikely to get that back from the supplier. But if it's identified at the time, the supplier is much more likely to absorb that cost for you and fix it for you very, very quickly. So that's why I go development sample, pre-production sample, and pre-shipment sample. And you should always keep these samples in your office or in your warehouse, wherever it may be, because and from every single order. So if you're like on order 10 and you're like, this product looks a little bit different, like the quality, like it's a little bit lighter, I don't know what's wrong with it. You could actually go to order number 3 or order number 5 because you have the samples in your office and look at them side by side, and if they're not the exact same, then you can flag up to your supplier, hey, this one's a little bit lighter, it shouldn't be like that, I didn't confirm this. You can send it to a testing house, get a report, and then you can sort of claim compensation. But if you never keep your samples and your quality fades, you'll never know about it because you don't have anything to compare it to. So it's always wise to keep one sample. You have to
rely on your memory, basically, which is not always a good thing because you've got so many things to do. Plus, you can't prove it. Not only are you going to rely on your memory, you can't really prove it. Would that be something that you suggest at any level, like even if you're ordering 200 units? But technically speaking, if you're ordering 200 units, you're not making changes to the product. You're basically just buying it as is.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're buying, like, let's say a Me Too product where, like, I see the product online, I want to order exactly this, but I just want to add my logo to it, then fine, the first sample is, I would just confirm it if you're happy with it. And then and that's sometimes a good strategy to get started because sometimes you want to ask the factory, what items do you have in stock? Like, rather than if you want something quickly or if you want something cheaply, sometimes factories just have stock items that they just keep producing, and then you just change the packaging, and that could be a good way to get started. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I did put a story up on Instagram telling people that we're going to be doing this together and asking if they have any questions, and we got some interesting questions. So I'm going to pop them on the screen as I ask you so that, you know, everybody can follow along. So we've got a few general questions. A question from the Sumaya. She is asking, which website do you recommend for suppliers in China?
So as we talked about, I would start on Alibaba. There's some other websites as well. You have globalsources.com, which kind of gives you like, I wouldn't say better or worse factories, but just different factories. So like if you have something a little bit more unique or a little bit more bespoke, you might find something on Global Sources, definitely worth checking out as well. There's another website, madeinchina.com. But these websites, while they might offer you different things, they don't necessarily have like the same verification steps and trade assurance that Alibaba do. So I would always kind of start on Alibaba. One other one I really like is importyeti.com, and that allows you to check shipping records, but that's only shipping records
for the US.
For the US. So it's just a good way to verify, like, if you like a brand in the US, where to get their goods manufactured.
Even if, well, if you find a supplier that's sending a lot of products over to the US, then they should be a good supplier, no? Another question from A. Akurbal. I'm sorry if I'm saying the name incorrectly. How to find a good, well, I know we've already talked about it, but maybe you've got a few tips up your sleeve. How to find a good supplier, what is the criteria? Is there any additional criteria somebody needs to, let me add to this. I find a lot of people tell me, well, what if I order a sample from the supplier and they send me the best one? And I want to do a Me Too product. So I just want to add my logo on it, just basic starting out. So do you find that people have that mindset of, I find it a lot, and it's understandable, of course, when somebody's starting a new business and they can't like physically walk into the supplier's warehouse or factory. Yeah. They have to fly very long distances. So it is a little bit daunting to hand over your cash to somebody that you basically know over WeChat, through the internet. So I find that a lot of people inherently have that in their mind, that, you know, suppliers are out there to scam me. They want to steal my money. Yeah. So, well, of course that is a little bit true, but most suppliers are there to do business, just like we are. Mm-hmm. So is there a way that you can kind of make sure that the supplier is 100% legitimate?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that process that we talked about on Alibaba, that will always identify you with the best factories. And as you mentioned, Crystal, like, those sort of suppliers who actually want to do business and are not there to like make a quick buck. But when you just type in the product that you're looking for, hit search, and you click on one of those random listings that have, like, you know, $30 for this microphone, and if you look, like, okay, they might be just on Alibaba and for 1 year, maybe they're just a trading company or sourcing agent or something like that. Those are the sort of occurrences where something could happen. But that's why we always like trade assurance as well, because if something comes in our order that we did not ask for, or something different, then Alibaba will refund us, and that's a great sort of insurance policy that we have as well. And then in terms of, you know, what happens if we get like a really nice sample and they produce something different, that's why we do like the pre-shipment inspections, right? So whatever sample it is that you've verified and confirmed, you send that information, or you can even send that sample to your pre-shipment inspection company, and then they're going to take very, very detailed photos and videos and graphics and reports on what goods are in the factory. So you don't ship anything, you don't pay that remaining balance until you're happy with that pre-shipment inspection report.
Got it. But, you know, you can only do so much. At the end of the day, you're going to have to risk it and try to work with the best person possible.
Yeah, and eventually, as you get bigger and you start to get credit on your orders, credit gives you that protection, because, like, let's say, for example, you don't pay for the goods until after they arrive, and there's a problem with the stock, then you don't actually have to pay for those goods the full amount if there was an issue. So once you grow bigger and you can get credit terms, then you have even more protection as well.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Kian. We do have a private video that we're filming for all our members on sellersociety.io, so you can go ahead and check it out right now. Where can they find you for more information, Kian? I know you have an amazing Facebook group, so obviously I'm going to leave all the links in the video description box.
Sure.
But where else?
Yeah, thanks very much. So in the last year, I've sort of gone heavy into YouTube, created a lot of sourcing content there. Yeah. So YouTube channel just called Sourcing with Kian, Facebook group of the same name, Sourcing with Kian. People ask their sourcing questions and I jump in and answer it. And so if you like this content, feel free to jump along, and I'll see you there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.